Okay. Talk to him, Gemara. Okay, so tell the Mishnah. Beis Shammai says, Tina say, when a lady has namonas to say that her husband died, we let her get married. And she also gets to get her ksuba. Tina say, she has a namonas l'gabi getting married, but not l'gabi mominus to get the ksuba, and therefore v'loy sitil ksubas. She doesn't get her ksuba. Amulem Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai told Basil, he tartan erev chamura. You bring matter a chiv misa, and you're letting her marry. V'loy nate momen akal. So you're not going to be matter a moment which is kal compared to a chiv misa. Amulem Basil still said matzinu. We find sheina achen nechnosan lanachala alpil. The Yorshim of this man would not have the right to go and take the Yerusha and sell it and split it up because she said he died. So you see, she doesn't have an amanus lagabe Yerusha. Amru lahem Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai told back to them, from what's written in her ksuba, we could learn shu kois of law. He writes in her ksuba, as long as you're an almana and you're staying single, you could be mefarnes off of the estate. But once you marry something else, titli masha cause of you should take what's written to you in the ksuba. So you see very clearly that was his commitment. His commitment wasn't in choshen mishbedin. If he dies, he takes the ksuba. Rather, he wrote in the ksuba that I'm being machayev myself to give you ksuba if you're going to remarry, and we're being matter to get married, so therefore she has a right to get the ksuba. And Basil were chayzer, and they passed at the end like Beis Shammai. Amar b'chista, zok b'chista, that we're not nebon, that she's not nebon to take ksuba according to Basil, or even according to Beis Shammai, where Yorshim can't go take the nechasim of this man who we're saying died, but Nisiabma, if one of the brothers, the Yibam, then Yevama, her Yavim, the man who is Meyabamer, Nichnas leNachla alpil. He gets a Nachla. Why? Haim Darshu Medrash Ksuba. Beis Shammai darshan the words of the Ksuba to give her the Ksuba when she becomes mutter. Anu loy nidrash Medrash Torah. So we shouldn't be darish the words of the Torah itself. It says in the pasuk Vayibam, Yakum al Shem Achiv Amar Achmana. The nechasim will go to his brother, and he himself stands in the place of his brother. Come, and he did Yibam, so he was come. So therefore, surely he gets the nachla. Amar of Nachman, Bas lebezin v'amar meis baili, he tiruni l'nasr. She came to Bezdin and she said, my husband died. Please be mater me to remarry. So what do? Matir nois l'nasr. They do just that because she has an amanas. The nois l'nla ksubasa, and they give her ksuba like we learned from the Mishnah. But what if she comes and says, Tanuli ksubasi, my husband died, I want my ksuba. But she doesn't ask to be free to be able to remarry. So then aflinase and matir noisa. There we won't even be mater her to remarry. My timer, why not? Because Adaita the ksuba of soy. She came on the das to get ksuba. She didn't come to remarry. Zokt Rashi, ubafukim amayna sahadi beina. Since she's not coming to be mater herself, l'shuk, she's just coming for the money. He's just coming for the money. You need to wait him. Ibaylu frekt gemara. What happens if she says hitiruni lehinase utnuli ksibasi? She says, I want two things. I want to remarry and I want my ksuba. Ma what's the law? Even the Amra Ksubasa, since she mentioned her Ksuba, Vaistacha is a died the Ksubasoi, and she didn't to aid him, and she wouldn't be Nemenes. I don't know, she's coming only to get a Hetel Shuk, and there we believe her for. But people don't know exactly what information the Besdin wants, so they say everything. They say whatever they think they need to say. Whatever information they have, they're going to share with the Besdin. And Rashi says, She really only wants to come for Nisuin, or that's her main focus. Visharinullah, and therefore we'll let her get married when we matter for her. The Sharinullah, once we matter her, then Shaklanabik Suba, the Misefer Ksuba Nilman. If you want to say, call me days later in Ish and therefore we're matter, and we say she's coming to go free. But the only reason why she mentioned the Ksuba is because she wants to give over all the information that she can to Bezin. What if she said it a different way? What if she said, first I want my Ksuba, and then be matter me. Ma, what would Allah be there? There she talked about her Ksuba first. I died to the ksuba side. Do you say for sure she's here? I'll die to the ksuba, and therefore we don't give it to her. Dilma, my mystery. She really is her ikar intent to come to get free, but she doesn't know what she needs to tell Bezin in order to be matir l'shuk. So she says ksuba as well, because she doesn't know. She wants to give over all the information, and it's not a raya from the fact that she had ksuba first. She says whatever she can say because she doesn't know, and therefore take it. Oh, good morning, Rebecca. I had to up my game because after that joke, I needed a better joke because I held that joke with the wrong joke. Because that joke shows that the Aiden doesn't like the shviger. And we need a joke that the shviger doesn't like the sneer, right? So I had to work on it. It's good. Good. We're gonna get there. We're right after there now. Zak the head of the Mishnah. Everybody is believed to say Eidus on a woman that she can go free, chutz, except for 5 women. Chamoisa, her mother-in-law, Ubas Chamoisa, and the daughter of her mother-in-law. And we're going to see Rashi, the reasoning for all of these things. Vitzarasa, and her co-wife, V'yevimta, and her husband's brother's wife, because she might become this woman's co-wife. Ubas Baila, and her stepdaughter, meaning if her husband had a daughter from a different wife. But these same people, if they would bring a get and say b'fani nechtam, they would be believed. Frank the Mishnah ma by get l'mitzvah. So why by get would she be believed? Sheksav moichiach, because by the get she has something in writing that's being moichiach. That there's a get. We're not relying totally on her. Zok the Helig Rashi, very important Rashi. The Yevimta, Eshes Yevamos, the wife of the man who would be miyabamer in the event that she would need evil. The time of the kulu, what's the reason why all of these women would lie and make and cause that she should be mizana as an eshish and cause her to be usher to her baal? They hate her, and they bedavka want to mess her up. So for Zok Rashi, let's go through these women why they would want to do something so bad. Shoimeres Beliba, she says in her heart, Zu Toichal, Kol Yikiai Vamalai. I worked hard my whole life and I penny pinched so that my husband and I can build an estate. And what's going to happen? My dear Yankele is going to yash the estate, and they shterek their faro at ausgeben the ganze Geld of his stissen. Was ich aber so schwer gearbeitet darauf. I'm going to mess her up, right? The Chain Bas Chamoisa, and the same thing would be with her sister-in-law, her husband's daughter. I'm Bear shall say, Zu Tirash, Kol Omal Ovi V'imi, Vani Etchen, I'll get pushed away. So you might ask, she's not going to get the money anyway. In economy. When it comes to sin, it doesn't matter. She still wants to undo her sister-in-law. V'yivimta, what's she worried about? Ureya, she's afraid, what am I going to do if her husband dies? And then my husband makes Yivam on her. Now she's going to be my co-wife. Ubas Baila and her stepdaughter, Zu Bab Imi, she's coming instead of my mother. And Lechelas Kalamola, and she's going to eat all of my mother's hard work. Ma beget me, says Rashi. The Medina Asaya. The Afagab the lies of Chinot, the Trichas Loimar, the funny Nechtam. Nevertheless, they believed why Shaksav Machiach is some Chinan Ikraksa. Ibailu. Bas Chamehama. What if this was the daughter of her father-in-law, but not her mother-in-law? Meaning that her father-in-law was married once before and had a daughter. So she doesn't have a mother who's relevant to this at all, because her mother is no longer married to the father-in-law. So what is the reason? Time of the Bas Chamoisa, the reason why the Bas Chamoisa hates her which is her sister-in-law, who's also the daughter of her mother-in-law. Mishum de'ika ima desanila. Since the mother writes her own, because the mother hates her because she's going to eat up her hard work. So he nami sanila. So since her mother's writes in Garun, her mother's antagonizing her. Her mother's saying, "I hate this girl." So Huadin, the mother's daughter, will start hating this girl. But in the case of the sister-in-law, because her father-in-law had an earlier wife who he once had a child with, there's no mother writes in Garun because her mother doesn't care. Or maybe time of the Bas Chamoisa is the Umrah Ka'acha Legirsina de Ima. Why is the Bas Chamoisa angry? Nothing to do with her mother writes in Garun. Nothing to do with her mother telling her what a bad lady this is. Rather, she on her own is angry because at the end of the day, she sees this woman who's going to be able to eat up all of the hard work of her mother. Hachanami Kamer, so too Bas Chamel will also have her own independent problem without any mother being involved. And she'll say, Achla legishna v'venisai. You're going to be eating up my father's nechasim. And Rashi asks, she has no shaykhs to those nechasim because any nechasim that her mother brought into the marriage will go to her brothers because the ksubas been in dichrin, so they'll go to her brothers anyway. So they're not going to be mafsid anything that her mother brought into that marriage. Nevertheless, Rashi, the Lamaisa, her family would be entitled to some of the money from the father, and now she's going to be using that up. So there's still that anger. So even though she's not really going to get much of it anyway, it still bugs her that my father's money now is going to go to this woman.
Yeah, I thought it
That's right. That's right. Okay, Gavalti. So the shala over here is we learned that the mother-in-law hates the daughter-in-law. So when it comes to shvigers, do that from the still the shviger jokes. So the joke that Eli Stefanski said over, because it wasn't directly related to the daf. So she said over her stories, the seed's walking down the street, and there's thousands of people. And he wants to know what's do. And he looks already, he's looking to the front, and he sees all the way at the front of the Labaya, there's the meter and a hint. So he asks, who's guy to fool? So they told him, this woman, Rachman Latzon, she was by her son's house, and her son has a big wild dog, and the dog bit her, and she died. He says, oh, really? So, can I borrow that dog? So they said, sure, but you have to get to the back of the line. So that was his joke. But the real joke on the Sigir is wegen a Schwiger and a Schneer, der Schwiger hat fand a Schneer. So this is a story with a Hingaman. It was his first Pesach that he was married, and he went to his parents, he went to his family for Pesach. The first morning of Pesach, he gets up, everyone's tired because the Sedurim went late. So he's up, his mother's up, his wife didn't wake up, he's tired. And he puts his talus on, he's about to go to the Besmedrash. And his talus is filthy. It's filthy. So his mother looks at his talus and she gets so angry inside. See, the show, she won't tell this to him, but in her mind, she's thinking, you see there, she's coughing. There's steam coming out of here. Look at my daughter-in-law, what a lazy, good-for-nothing she is. His Shabbos talus was filthy. Shame she's to send her husband out as that talus. She didn't wash it out before Pesach. What an unbelievable low life I have for a daughter-in-law. She's puffing. Why is she puffing? Was she busy with the kids? Well, let her get up. Let her say, I'm up to see my son off the shul. Let her get up also. Oh, she's so angry. So when he goes to shul, he comes back from shul, and Vater, he's in that same filthy talus, and he sees his mother is looking him up and down, and he sees her already. She doesn't say anything, but he sees the smoke coming out of her ears, the sinner. So he tells his mother, Mommy, I'm so sorry about the talus. You have to understand, we were in such a rush, Erev Pesach, to come, that I left my talus with him. So Tati told me, you know what? You take my Shabbos talus, I'll wear my weekday talus for Pesach. Zakti Murvata, Tashma, Hakoil Nemonim Laha'ida. That's right. Tashma, Hakoil Nemonim Laha'ida. Everyone is nemenes to be made on her. except for 5 women. V'misa, if you're going to hold that Bas Chomeha is also one of the women who hates her, Shisavyon, so there's 6, because we should have added this woman to the list. Zaktumar, no, because on the tzad, that Bas Chomeha is going to hate her and not the menace, what's shot? Because she has her own sinner against this woman, her brother's wife. So maybe the reason for Bas Chamoisa is the Amar Ka'achla Legirsana Levenisoi. You're eating the wealth of the family. If that's the reason, then Loishna Bas Chamoisa Veloishna Bas Chameha. Then it doesn't need to add a special entry, a 6th entry of a woman who hates her. The Bas Chameha. It's the same thing. Bas Chamoisa Bas Chameha. It's another category. It's someone who hates this woman because she's eating up the Yerusha, the estate of the father. Frank the Gemara, nothing to do with Bas Chameha, a whole new side. We just established that there's 5, but not we have a brisa that says that there's 7 women. Zok the Gemara, he Rabbi Yehuda. The brisa with 7 women is Rabbi Yehuda. Did not Rabbi Yehuda Moisef Af Ashes Av, the wife of the father, the Akala and a Shneer. So Amruloi, they told him you can't add these as 6 and 7 because they're really the same thing as 2 of the noshim that we have already. Eishasav, Harahi B'chlal Basabal. Basabal is the reciprocal relationship of Eishasav, my husband's daughter. So to the daughter, you're my father's wife. So it's the same relationship. Zokt Rashi, Eishasav Harahi B'chlal Basabal. The kivin the zoo ain't meidel zoo. Since Basabal can't be made for Eishasav, Memela Nafla, Eishasav not made meidel Bas Baila. So therefore, the Eishasav cannot be made for Bas Baila. That's not an extra case, and therefore because when it mentions Basabal, it means each one of these 2 women cannot be made for each other. So Eishasav Harei B'Chlal Basabal, so it doesn't need to say it, and Kala. And Kala is the opposite of Chamoisa. If Chamoisa can't say for her daughter-in-law, so her daughter-in-law can't say for her. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Bishlam Chamoisa, I understand why Chamoisa is not nemenes to say Edus on her daughter-in-law. Sani lo lachala, she hates her daughter-in-law. The Amra ka'achla legisani, she's eating up my hard work. Alakala, my time Sani lo Chamoisa. Why would a Kala hate her mother-in-law? Her mother-in-law is not eating up any of her money. So you don't say automatically that the other person hates her too. Mechadesi. So she's angry at the figure also. Okay, I hear ich can't think figure. In hand to get sat and think figure. It's not you're eating up my Yerisha, it's Adarabba. You're making such choivis that ich was not to him. Can't let them choivis. Right? So to Gemara, Bishlama, Basabal. Why is it also the Shanal Eishes Av? Because the Amr Ka'achal Legasani the aim. Once again, she's saying you're eating up my mother's hard work. The Eishes Av, my time is Shanal Basabal. Why would Jada Basabal? So that's why, since it's not, they don't have that sinner, that's why it can't be listed, it can't be included in one of the 5. But frankly, Gemara, you're saying even starker, you're saying there's no reason why there should be sinner. There's no reason why there should be sinner. Elamai Moshe Tarti. So why did Rabbi Yehuda Tak include them? If Rabbi Yehuda said they're not the same sinner, is the other way of the relationship. So then why Tak aren't able to? Ella Kala my time is son the Megala Livana called the Avda. What does the mother-in-law do? The mother-in-law is constantly telling her son, your wife did this wrong, and your wife did that wrong. So this is a lady who's constantly trying to make her husband angry at her. She'll hate that. Okay, it's not guilt, but it just goes to prove that Eden don't only fight over guilt. There's other things they fight over too. A whole day, her mother-in-law is bereading her. Her daughter-in-law, she'll hate her mother-in-law. Okay? Eishasab, Nami Sani Lebasabal. The Eishav hate the Basabal. You know why? Again, the Megala Lavia called the Obda. What happens if someone has a stepdaughter? So her stepdaughter is going to constantly be telling her father, oh, your wife did this, and your wife did that, because she's a stepdaughter, she misses her mother, so Vater, she's not going to like her. Okay, so Vibalt is a completely independent reason why these women hate the other one in the pair. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said you have to list it up as a special listing, as 6 and 7, because it's a different sinner. For Rabbanan, the Rabbanan says no, there's no different sinner. The reason why the reason why Kala hates the Chamaisa, the reason why Eshes Av hates the Basabal is Kamayim Haponim Laponim Kain Leifa Adam La'adam. Zot Rashi, Rabbanan Kamayim Haponim Laponim, Krok Sib Kamayim Haponim Laponim, Kamayim Halalu, Shadam Taifa Behen, Viraya Behen Ponim Kaponim. When you look in the water, you see a reflection. If he's smiling, then the mirror, the person in the mirror looking back at him is smiling. If he looks with that kriminus, hemakumos, kain leva adam la adam acher. Imu ayevese gamu ayhavoy. The Bach takes out the zeh. Imu soina yaseh gamu soina. Hilchach leiboyu lusfinu. Therefore, he didn't need to list off the other side. Because the time of Kama, Shma'ina, they didn't know honest. From the reason why the Chamoisha doesn't like the Kala, from there already you know the Kala won't be the menace. They're keeping the Chamoisha Sani Lachala, since the mother liked the Kala, Mishim the Ka'acha Legirsana, then Kala automatically Nami Sani Lachamoisha, the Sani La, because she hates her. The Chivin the Basabal Sani Lachav, and she's Nami Sani Ladida. So therefore, according to their abundant, Ichtavnish Kum Kanai Pshutum Kanai Taritum. It's because of my upon him, so it's automatically included, so it doesn't need a separate listing. Rabbi Yehuda, what about Rabbi Yehuda? I.e. also has a passage of Kamayim upon him. He be Divrei Torah said, Kamayim upon him is referring to Divrei Torah. So let's see what Rashi says. What does it mean to Divrei Torah? Rashi, Lufi Panim Belay, Chatanoishim LeTorah. How much effort you put into the Torah, Libcha Emid Lach Lahamid Girsah. That your heart's going to help you understand it. Im yogataba, if you mitzvah on the Torah, timta you're going to find, or tamotza you'll find. Lo yogatalo timta. Lashon acher in Rabbi Maz b'loi panim. If I ever get a shemaichel to a Talmud from Machim, then the Talmud will be misliach. Im lav, and if he won't, ain't Machim Rabbi. A Rebbe who's a nasty, bitter guy, and he doesn't show extra love and extra care to each Talmud. Such a Rebbe will never be able to be Mechalech Talmid. So this light for them. Beautiful. There's a story into the Gemara with Rav Padas, who would patiently teach his Talmud 400 times every. I'm sorry. That's right. I'm sorry. That's right. Try to patiently teach his Talmidim 400 times to give them clarity. And one day, the Gemara tells us that he came into Besmedrash and he was in a big rush. And he told the Besmedrash that I need to leave right after Shir. And he did as he usually did. He went it over 400 times and he was getting ready to leave. And the Talmud didn't understand it. So he told the Talmud, I don't understand. Every day I say it 400 times for you and you understand it. What's up is today you don't understand it? He said, Rebbe, I knew you were in a rush. I saw that you're in a rush. So I was under pressure to understand it. And because of that, I couldn't understand it. So the Friday said, you know what? I'm not in a rush. And he stayed another 400 times. Right? And the Gemara says that the Aibisha told him you give a choice, either you live for 400 years or you're guaranteed all your Talmidim if it's nobody. He was given a choice. And it was either that or for sure all his Talmidim would be Tzliach or something like that. And he says that he asked for the second thing, Hatman gave him by them. So you see, a Rebbe has to have always a smile on his face. And patience, that's right. Okay. A Rebbe is a doctor, he has to have patience. Zok Gemara weiter. Rabbi Yehuda, he be Divrei Torah. Amar Bacha by Avia. Bacha by Avia said, Boy by my Rabbah. They used to have the following question in my Rabbah. What about Chamoisa Habal Achmika? What if this is a woman who could possibly be her mother-in-law, but she's not her mother-in-law now? And who is that? What happens if she's married to a man, and this man has a brother with whom he shares a father, but not a mother? So this is a man who's her husband's brother, who would have to do Yibum if her husband would die, because Yibum is Achen Min Ha'av. What if this guy has a mother, decides his mother, who's not the mother of her husband, right? So that's called Chamoisa Bal Achemika. Because if Chas v'Shalom, her husband will die, and she would fall to Yibum, this lady now will become her mother-in-law. Hat is the Schoenfeld, right? That's right. Tomorrow. It's not a stepmother because this lady is no longer married to her father-in-law, right? She's Mugareshes, but she still might be her mother-in-law one day if she has to do Yibum. So now, Dr. Moore, me maska daite the misbal the nafel kaviyam the sadila eloi. Do you say that eventually she's thinking, what if her husband dies? Then my son's going to do Yibum on her. Now she's my sneer. Right? So where do you see such a concept? Very simple. There was once a younger man who, no, he's a booker, and he was dating a girl, and it was going very well. So he wanted to introduce this girl to his mother. So what happened was, he said, "Mommy, let me show you who she is." So what happened was, he said, "I know there's going to be a whole, her and her friends are going out to a certain restaurant to eat lunch. So come, let's go to the restaurant, and you'll see her." So they go to the restaurant, and he points to that table where all the girls are. And the mother says, "You don't have to point her out. I already know which one is the one that you're going out with." So how do you know? She's that one over there. She says, "No, how did you know?" She says, "Well, time." So that's the mood here. Huh? Right. Right. Oh, that's what we're talking about. And the other stories is once a Medrash, and after one Friday night, the Ruh said there's a new person in the Medrash, a 35-year-old guy, a prestigious looking guy. He's there in the back of the Medrash, but he looks up, it's a club. So after Ma'ariv, the came to take a Shabbos to the roof. He came to take a Shabbos, so the roof said, "Shalom Aleichem, how are you?" And you look so clapped. What's bothering you? He says, "Listen, Rabbi, I'm 35 years old. I'm a good-looking guy. I have good yichus. I have a good family. I have a good job. I have everything going for me. Can't find a shidduch." The roof says, "You're right. It's very unusual. Why wouldn't you find a shidduch? What seems to be the difficulty? He says, every time I find a woman who's good for me, I bring her home, show my mother, introduce to my mother, and my mother nixes. I don't know what I'm going to do." So the Ruth says, "I have an idea for you. Why don't you find a woman who's just like your mother? For sure she'll like it." He says, "Rabbi, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that." 6 weeks later, he's in the Mishmerish again, and the same thing. He looks at the club. The Rebbe asked him, "Who is? You didn't use my item? Yeah, you used your item. It didn't work. It worked unbelievable." He says, "What happened? I found a girl who looks like my mother, who talks like my mother, who acts like my mother, who dresses like my mother, who wears the same glasses as my mother, who wears the same perfume as my mother." So she says, "No," because my mother loved her, but my father couldn't take her. Zog to Gemara Vayt. Tashma. So let's see on number base. Tashma. Amra Meis Bible. What happens? And this is a mission that we're going to learn later. We're going to learn later today, as we finish the parak. She said, "Amra Meis Bible. My husband died. And then my mother-in-law died." So let's analyze the details of this case. If she said Meis Bible, that means this lady is no longer her mother-in-law, right? And then my mother-in-law died. So I should be Nemenes because she's not my mother-in-law anymore. But it's more than that. The case is her husband and her father-in-law, maybe they worked together in business and they went to Medina's Hayah. They were away. If they were away, is this mother-in-law now causing tsar to the daughter-in-law? Is she bareding? Is she bareding her daughter-in-law? No, she's not bareding her daughter-in-law to her husband or to her son, because they're gone, right? So what's the halacha? So the svura of bareding doesn't apply here because he's not here. What is the halacha? Tinase, she can get married, the sitayel ksuba, and she can get her ksuba. But the chamoisa asura, even though we believe her lagabe herself, we don't believe her lagabe chamoisa. My timer, chamoisa asura. Why does the Mishnah tell us that her mother-in-law will be also, even though she's believed that her husband died? Lav mishum damrinon Isn't it because we say at least legabe the mother-in-law, loy bailamais is nishkishtoigen nishkafloigen. Her husband didn't die, loy chamamayis, and her father-in-law didn't die. So why is she saying a lie that her father-in-law died if he in fact is alive? The reason why this daughter-in-law is saying that her father-in-law died is he wants to mess up her mother-in-law. Why does she want to mess up her mother-in-law? Because she's afraid. When my husband come back, if she's messed up and her husband has to divorce her, and she's mechura from a zuya, she's mechura from a gudif, and she's mevuza, and she's out of the family, she won't be able to bother me anymore and tell my husband how bad I am. So I want to mess her up. So you see from here that she has an interest in messing up a woman who's not bothering her now, but who's going to bother her in the future. No, oy bezoi, her future mother-in-law, which it calls chamoisa balachmik, is the same way. Even though nothing's happening now, about something's happening in the future, therefore she still hates her and she's told that's her. So that's why you don't have a raya. Dil mashani hasam the ragish lutzayr. Here it's different because what happened before her husband went away? Her shviger was torturing her already. She was beheading her. So she remembers clearly Vusakavain, she'll mess up her mother-in-law, even though right now she's not actively bothering her because she doesn't want her to come back and bother her. But there was never hatred. It's only going to be something in the future. For that, you don't have a raya that she's not immense. Beautiful. Look, the Mishnah Vayit. Eid Omer Mace. One aid came along and said Mace. Venices, and because of that, she got married. If you're not going to get married, I'll pay it echad. Uva echad, and then another aid came, but Amar loy Mace. So the loch is I raise loy say. Of course, she doesn't go out because she had an amonus at the first aid. What about Eid Omer Mace? Shnayim Oivim loy Mace. What if one aid said Mace and two aidim came along later and said loy Mace? Now she has a problem. This is, even though she got married, Teitze, she has to divorce her husband. Shnayim Oimer Mace. What if two aidim said Mace? The aid Oimer loy Mace, and one aid said loy Mace. Well, then even though she wasn't married yet, the aid echad has nothing to say. B'makom shnayim has no nemanos b'makom shnayim. She's allowed to get married. Al pi shnayim aid. Zog the Gemara. Time of the nisses. It says that if an aid echad came, if she got married, then she doesn't have to leave her husband. Haloi nisses. But if she didn't get married yet, and the second aid came along and said that her husband's alive, loisi not say. Are you telling me she can't get married? Ula said, if the Torah was ma'im dei echad, he has enough two ages. So once there was Kapaskin and Bezin, I'll be to say, they want the eight as ages, it's accepted as two ages. And now if another eight comes later, so why is it dafka if she got married, even if she didn't get married? You're right. And we already accepted her edus, and we were matter her. It's a shayla. What hitiru mean? Does that mean it's psak bezin, or it means they already accepted the edus? But once there's already psak bezin, hitiru nasei, uba echad v'amar loimeis, and somebody else came along and said loimeis after there was a psak in alpidei echad, loiseitze mehiteda dishayin. Then she doesn't leave her original heter, and she can get married. Tosha says grada that she cannot get married to chatchila in such a case, but if she got married, b'di eved, we won't make her divorce. Eidomer mace. What if one said mace? One said mace, and then two Eidim came along and said loy mace, then he has to be mitzvah. Feknor pshita, the ein dvar shalachad b'makom shnayim.
Charles, mit so einem Krieg so, dass jetzt muss man Krieg bleibt, schon also ja double I. Once it's established as a double itis, now if it comes to other two itis, it's two against two. It's either chush.
Very good kasha. So Rashi, kasha. So right opposite the Gemara, Rashi is eight oimemes. So Rashi, ubo eidim v'amru loimes. Pshita v'rak Gemara. Pshita the moidi ula. That even though ula said harikan shnayim, that's legabe neirechot. But legabe trei chashav gechad uvato. The lawyer reading said thing. So that's what the Gemara is asking. Sure, it's like two Eidim because another Eid won't be able to be Mevatel his Eid. But Avada, if two Eidim really come, that's Mevatel Eidach. That's more like Shricha Bapsuli Eidos. We're not speaking about two kosher Eidim that came. Two kosher Eidim came, there's nothing to talk about. You follow the two Eidim. But here it's two Eidim. Uchadirav Nechemia, and it's going to contract Nechemia. That's what we're saying now. That's what we're saying now. And the Eirech is also psulaydis. Everyone's psulaydis because we're it's the Rabbunan saying we're mamming them, but they're all psulaydis. The Tanya, Ibn Nechemia, whenever the Torah is mamming in Eirechad, halach acharoy deyos. So therefore, even though a male Eirechad came and said Eidos, if two women came afterwards, they're like two against one. And therefore, even though two women came, you're still going to believe them connected to one aid, because when Nechemia hold that you go basar roib deis. Correct. Okay. The Ibai Sema, or you could say no. If there was an Eid Echad that was Neman, it's like two Eidim. And two women can't be sourced for him later. Kol Heichad also Echad kosher meikara, afilu meya noshim keirechad damyon, and they won't be mevatel. So what's the case of our Mishnah, where we said two Eidim came, and it's a chiddush that you believe the two Eidim, and going to say Isha meikara. The first Eid was also an Isha. There you say for sure that you go basar roib deis, and therefore if two come later, she has to divorce. How are you going to explain Rav Nechemia's words? And not vasu shtei nashim be'ish echad, kishnei anashim be'ish echad. It's vasu shtei nashim be'isha achas, kishnei anashim be'ish echad. Almost shtei nashim be'ish echad. If there's two nashim that come, when the first was an eid echad, kepalgu palgadam. So therefore, if first an eid echad came and said that meis baila, and then two women came, and they echad, a man, that's right, and later two women came and said that he's still alive, it's palgu palga, and she remains married, and she's mutter to stay married to her husband. The palga upalga dam.
Can't get married.
That's right. If she was not married yet, she wouldn't be able to get married. But if she was married already, we will not force her to give a get. So Rashi says, Rashi kapago pago be'irechad aimer meis b'tul nasi uba'acher v'amar loy meis v'amar v'masishan loy seitzei me'itei arisha. Okay, Gavalti. Okay, morning, David. We're just finishing up the last task. Shnayim aimer meis. If two Eidim said that she died, and they so of course you let her get married. What's the chiddush? If two Eidim said that you can get married, so suppose you can get married. Dr. Umar, weiter the same chiddush of Psula Eidis with Rav Nechemia. We're going with Psula Eidis. So the two Eidim that came originally, I was mater, were women. So it's going according to Rav Nechemia, the also was Rav Deis. And we telling us that you follow Rav Deis. And since two women said that she's mutter to be married, therefore we don't listen to the one woman who says that it's also. Didn't we just learn that halacha a minute ago? So when do you go basar roiv deyos? That's l'chumra, meaning if two women came later to answer her, you're machmer and you make her leave her husband. But to be Simon two past ladies l'kula to allow her to get married, loy maybe there Abnei Chevi didn't say halacha. That even then you could be Simon on the two ladies. So even though we didn't learn yesterday and we didn't learn the Gemara of Shviger, but the jokes we have to get anyway. So I had a taina because Mechi told me over the joke that Rabbi Eli Stefansky said. Lagabi, the Gemara talks about how a Shviger hates a Shnir, a mother-in-law hates a daughter-in-law. So he said over a joke. I'm not going to say it exactly the way he said it. I'm going to say it the way I heard it. Is that person was once walking down the street and he sees a massive levaya. There's thousands of people by this levaya. And he's wondering which god Lador died. So he pushes his way to the front of the levaya and there he sees something astonishing. He sees a big dog and an orange. So he's wondering, what's going on over here? So they said, this lady died, who happens to be Yankel's mother-in-law. This guy who's telling right near the dog. He says, oh, really? What happened? What did she die from? This dog, Yankel's dog, who never leaves his side, bit her and killed her. She said, really? Can I borrow that dog? He said, sure, but you have to get to the back of the line. Right? So that was the joke. It's a good joke, but Lamaisa doesn't talk about how a mother-in-law hits a daughter-in-law. So I shared a story that could be, I said it over before, but it's mamish designed for this Gemara. If I said it over before, there was a mistake then. This young man who's married his first year, he comes to his parents for Pesach. And Pesach in the morning, he puts his talis on to get ready to go to shul. And his talis is filthy. Every piece of kugel he ever ate in shul, and every piece of kishke he ever ate in shul, there's a remnant of everything on that talis. And his mother's up, his wife is still sleeping because Pesach in the morning, people are sleeping because the Seder ended late. And his mother looks him up and down, and you can see she's not saying it, but you can hear it loud and clear as the steam erupts from her ears. My daughter-in-law is such a lazy, good for nothing. This is her husband's Shabbos talis, and she can't keep it clean. She's not embarrassed to send her husband out in such a dirty talis. And who knows? She probably doesn't ever do the laundry. She probably doesn't clean the house. She probably doesn't cook. She's a lazy, good for nothing. And why isn't she up? Why should she? She has babies. She took care of all night. Let her get up and see her husband off the shul. Oh, did I fall in with this lousy, bad daughter-in-law? The fella, comes home from shul, and his mother-in-law is waiting. His mother is waiting for him, staring him up and down, steam and smoke coming out of her, every crevice in her body, freaking out. But she can't say anything. But without saying anything, it's loud and clear what she's saying. He says, "Mommy, I see you're looking at my talis, how dirty it is. I'm so sorry, Mommy. You have to understand, I was in such a rush to come Erev Pesach that I forgot my talis at home. So Tati said, here, I'll give you my Shabbos talis, and I'll wear my weekday talis for Yom Tov." So that talks about how a mother-in-law loves her daughter-in-law. Then we had a shaila in the Gemara. Yesterday. What happens if this woman is not my mother-in-law, but she might become my mother-in-law one day in the future? Does she hate me too? Right? And the Gemara wanted to know this at the shaila. So for that, I said over a beautiful story. A boy was once dating a girl, and it was going very well. And his mother wanted to see the girl, but it was a little bit too early to introduce her to his mother. But she wanted to know who he was. So she says, you know what? He tells him, I know that she's going out with a whole bunch of friends to the restaurant on Tuesday night. How about we'll go to the restaurant and I'll point her out. So they get to the restaurant and all the girls are around the table. And the mother-in-law says, okay, you show me who she is. So he's about to tell his mother who this girl is, and she said, I already know which one it is. It's that one over there in the blue sweater. He said, yes, man, how did you know? He says, because I hate her already. Okay. And then there's a third story that I said over. I hope I didn't repeat myself too many times about this. There was once this fellow who came to Anubis Medrash, came for Kabbalah Shabbat to Meir, and he's a good-looking guy. He's tall, he's looking, he's dressed well, he's a sophisticated guy, but he looked a little bit downtrodden. So after davening, everyone went around to take a Shabbos to the Rav. He went too. The Rav gave him a Shalom Aleichem. He asked him who he was. He said, I see trouble on your face. What's going on? He told the rabbi, what's going on? I'm 35 years old. I have everything going for me. I'm a successful lawyer. I look good. I dress well. I have a nice family. I have everything going for me. Can't find a wife. So the rabbi says, it's not unusual. You have such an unbelievable situation. Why can't you find a wife? What seems to be the issue? He says, because every time I find a wonderful woman that I want to marry, I bring her home and I introduce her to my mother, and my mother next to her. So the rabbi says, let me give you an answer. Find a woman that's just like your mother. She'll have to like her. So he says, it's a good idea. I'm going to try that out. Join. Comes back 6 weeks later. Again, he looks downtrodden. The rabbi says, what's wrong? Did my eitzah not work? Did Rabbi, your eitzah work to perfection? So what went wrong? He says, I'll tell you. I found a girl who's exactly like me. She looks like my mother. She's the same height as my mother. Same hair color as my mother. She wears her hair the same way my mother wears her hair. She wears the same glasses as my mother, the same perfume, everything. So he said, what happened? My mother loved her. So he said, what's the problem then? My father couldn't take her. Okay, so Mishnah. What if you have one aide who said that her husband died. And the other one says that she didn't die. So Rashi says we're talking about two nashim tzaras. A man had two wives, and one of the women said, "My husband died," and the other woman said, "My husband didn't die." Zu shaymeres meis. The woman who said that my husband died, Tina said she didn't get married. Visita el ksubasa, and like we learned earlier, that she gets a ksuba as well. The zu shaymeres loimeis. And the woman who said loimeis, loisinase, she can't get married. She doesn't get a ksuba. What if one said mace and one said nerag? So they both agree that he died. Where they're differing is on how he died. Since they're contradicting each other, they can't get married. So right away, you ask, what about in the first case? In the first case, they're also contradicting each other. So how can we let them get married there? So the Gemara is going to say two pshatim. The first shot that the Gemara is going to say is that you're right. The Gemara is not only arguing on the case of Echas Haimeris Meis, Achas Haimeris Nerag, the Gemara is also arguing on the first case that since Hailu Machisha Zuasu, Hare Elu Lo Yinasu, they're not allowed to be married. There's going to be another shot as well that we'll get to. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon say, Hail V'zu Moidais Shein Kayim. Since they both agree that he's not alive, therefore Yinasu, they can both get married. We don't look into such great detail as to the method of the death. Rather, if they both say that he died, there you could let him get married. I think we pass like Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, and halacha l'maisa, even it's brought down that when the aid comes and says that a woman dies, they don't make too many drishas for chakirs. There's actually a whole shayla that you make drishas for chakirs. You cross question them, but even if you do cross question them, they're not. You don't focus on the details as long as we can have proof that as long as we have Adam saying that he died, or one aid who said that the husband died, they'll be mater daguna. Okay, Zok Gemara weiter. What happens if Adam or Mace, the Adam or Loimes? You have two Adam. One said Mace, and one said Loimes. Or Isha Imeris Mace, the Isha Imeris Loimes. Or one woman came along and said Mace, and one woman came along and said Loimes. Then I raise a Loitinase, he's not allowed to get married. Of course, they both came at the same time. They never passed like that. Rashi adds, I'm sorry? No, the first case where we said that once the first aid was already accepted, right? So then Hareu Kishnayim. Here, it's before it was accepted in Paskin. Then there's a kusha. Right? What Rashi adds here. Oh, yeah, that's correct. But the last case is also referring to if an Isha, not one of these two women, an Isha, an aid, a woman, a witness who's not one of the women here who are married. Now, I'm happy you brought that up because Rashi speaks up at Ferish when he says Isha Meres Mace. It's talking about any woman who said Mace and any woman who said Loy Mace, even if the woman was the Tzara. So it's also referring to the same case as the Rashid, but it's also referring to any other woman as well, and that's very, very relevant in the Gemara's Shakla Batari. Okay, so let's see the Gemara Vayter. Time of the Amr Loy Mace. In the first case, the woman who's not allowed to marry said, Loy Mace, my husband didn't die. Hoishtika, what if she didn't say anything? Tinase, would you be able to be medayik from the Mishnah that she could get married? So one woman said Mace, her tzara said nothing. Are you going to let the tzara get married? We just learned in the last Mishnah that if one tzara comes and says that her husband died, the other tzara cannot get married based on her testimony because she hates her. So oibazoi, the diak of our Mishnah shver. And for the Gemara, don't make such a deal. Don't make such a deal. I said, then you're going to ask me, why did the Mishnah only express that the tzara is osir when the tzara said loy meis? It's because there's a svara to say that if she doesn't say anything, we know she can't get married. Her tzara has not been believed. But there's a svara to say that if she said besferish loy meis, there we should bedafka let her get married. Why is that? Loy meis is strichele. So kedai de chamina hamai. She really did die. The hard to come loy meis. The reason why she said loy meis is lekul kula letzara hidi kamechavna. She wants to ask her tzara wants to get remarried. She knows that. She hates her tzara, but she wants to stop her from getting remarried. So she's bedavka saying loy meis, even though it's messing herself up too, because now she won't be able to get married. There's some snapshot in polishtim kamra. You see, when it comes to hatred, there's no rational reason. Because even in the previous 5 women that we learned, they don't benefit from making her usher, right? The mother-in-law is upset that she's going to yashin you. What's the difference? If she doesn't yashin you, someone else will yashin you. You're going to die. Someone's going to get the hustle. But she hates her anyway. So you see, hatred is not rational. Nevertheless, so you might think if she said loymes, it actually proves that Hitaka did die, and she's bedavka trying to ask her sister-in-law, Kamash Malon, that it does not, it's not matter here, and we do not allow her to marry, but we do allow her sister-in-law to marry.
Because she said loymes,
She should be able to get married because we know for sure she's lying. Yeah. Sometimes we involve with dafka bavazin that you're wrong. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a funny story. There was once a Ruv who was giving a get. It's a true story. And the woman was there for the get, and the man wasn't showing up. And a woman walked into Bezin, and he said, I'm the husband. I'm here to give the get. A woman walks in and says, I'm the husband. I'm here to give the get. So the Ruv, the Dafka, went over to him and hugged him and said, I'm so happy you're here. You know, to show you, I'm not playing with your nonsense. So you're saying that loymesh, we're going to be back to you also. It's not an issue in the gear. There's no issue for me to hug you. You're a man. I'm not in the spool. As a matter of fact, the Toronto police are the laughing stock of the entire world. You know what happened last week? There was a missing persons report. So whenever there's a missing persons, they have to publicize that someone's missing so the public could help find the guy. This was on all the news channels all over the world, all the main news media, the CNNs and the Fox News. There's the nusach was written: lost woman, fair complexion, neck beard, and the pictures of a man. So the world said, "How crazy have we become? We'd rather not. How crazy has the Toronto police become? They'd rather subscribe to this woke nonsense, even though it risks that they won't find the guy. Because if anyone's looking for a woman, they see him walking down the street, no one's going to think that's the one. So show to what you are. On a missing persons report, there's a guy with a full beard, and it says lost woman. Only the Toronto police woke kooks. Okay, Zok the Gemara. But to write a parking ticket, they can do. Zok the head of the Gemara weiter. Zok the head of the Gemara weiter. Achas emeres meis. One said meis, and achas emeres loy meis. I'm sorry, this is going on the second case. One woman said meis naturally, and the other tzar said neherat. And there we have a machlokes where a mayor holds that they're machish each other, and therefore neither one can get married. In fact, the Gemara lift like Rameir Bereisha. So why doesn't Rameir argue in the first case of the Mishnah, where the first case says that one woman said loy meis? If they both agreed that it was meis, but different reasons, if their mayor says that neither one is good, you can't believe either one. So then, how about in the case where one said loy meis? For sure, you shouldn't be able to marry anyone off. The first case of the Mishnah is also subject to the machlokes, and their mayor disagrees with the first case of the Mishnah. And in fact, if one said meis and the other one said loy meis, according to Reb Meir, you will not let either one get married. Rabbi Yochanan says no. Afilu temer Reb Meir. Reb Meir would also agree that if one woman said loy meis and one woman said meis, we will let the woman who said meis get married. But if they both said meis, but for different reasons, then we don't believe either one of them. So the whole afilu Reb Meir moida, you know why? The chol loy meis ve'edus isha lav hakashim. When they both said meis, but for different reasons, we're choshish that it's bidadami, and therefore we will not allow either of them to get married. But if a woman says loy meis, that's not a hakasha. We don't even consider it a kasha. We don't consider it at all, because we are assuming that she's just trying to mess up her sister-in-law, and therefore we ignore it completely. But if she said meis for a different reason, then we're afraid that they're both the Didami. Tanan we learn, which is the end of our Mishnah, which Mechi brought up earlier. Eilaymer meis, eilaymer loy meis, ishaymer meis, vishaymer loy meis, harezu loy sinasei. There she can't get married. And like Rashi told us, it says ishaymer. It doesn't matter who the isha was. It even includes if one tzara said meis and one tzara said loy meis. So Bishtam Rabbi Lazar, Bishtam according to Rabbi Lazar, how will you understand this sefer the Mishnah? Stomach Reb Meir. You'll say that this is going according to Reb Meir, who holds that if one said meis and one said loy meis, loy sinasei. Rabbi Yochanan kasha. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's going to be very fair. Because according to Rabbi Yochanan, even Reb Meir agrees that if one tzara said meis and one tzara said loy meis, that you let her get married. So what's shot? Who's going to be the Tana of the sefer of our Mishnah? Zaktamar kasha. Now, kasha doesn't mean it's tiyufta. So the Mefarshim explain that the way Rabbi Yochanan would understand the Mishnah is he would say not like Rashi. When it says Ishay Meres Meis, Ishay Meres Loy Meis, it doesn't include the two tzaras. And therefore, it's referring to Stam to Eidim. So if one Eidechad said Meis, and one Eid said Loy Meis, Avada, we won't let her get married. Zok Tehel Gemor Baita. Ha'isha Shahocha, Hiu Baila, the Medina Sayah. A woman that her and her husband went the Medina Sayah. Vulva, and she came back. Her husband didn't make it back. And she said, Meis Baili, my husband died. So the halacha is she's mememes, tinasei, v'sita el ksubasa. However, v'tzarasa asura. If she has a co-wife, that co-wife is also like we learned. The woman is not memenes to be mater her tzara. What happens if the deceased man was a kohen, but the tzarasa is a bas Yisrael? So she was eating truma up until this point because she was married to a kohen. Now we just allowed her co-wife to get married because we're assuming that this man died. We're saying this tzara cannot get married. Can this tzara continue eating truma as if she's still married to him, or are we choshed that he died and we don't let her eat truma? So Ha'izah Bas Yisrael L'Koyin Toichal B'Truma Divrei Tarfin. So it's Mavel Al Harayim. This is like a Tarti the Sarsi Psak. Because we're letting this woman get married, meaning we're passing Allah Maisa that this woman is free that her husband died, and this woman we're letting eat truma because we're passing Allah Maisa that her husband is alive. Let's see if Rashi says anything. It's not Rashi; it's going to be in the Gemara. We're going to see it in the Gemara. Okay, Gavalti. Rabbi Kiva Omer, no, Ein zu derech mois yasem de'aver. This is not how we avoid avers. This is asking for trouble. Therefore, she's not allowed to get married, but avada, we will not allow her to eat truma. Okay? Zog to Gemara weiter. How about she said, Amra meis by. That's right. She messed up her tuda pretty bad. Yeah. Amra meis by. What if she said meis by? The achgach meis chami, and then my mother-in-law died. So the halacha is she's not believed to her for her mother-in-law, but she's believed for herself. Now this was the case that we learned on Amud Beis on top before when we were talking about hating a woman who's going to eventually be your daughter-in-law, right? So what if she's meis by the achgach meis chami? Tina says she's nemenes to get married that her husband died. The titel ksubas will get a ksuba. The chamoisa asura. And what about Ha'isha Bas Yisrael L'Koyin? Teichel B'Truma. If you're Tarfin. Kivaymer no. Ein zu derech ma'atzim de'avera. Ad shetei asura l'nosei. V'shur melech B'Truma. At least she got her shviger back. That her shviger cannot eat truma anymore. Zok the Gemara U'Tzricha. Why do we need both cases in the Mishnah? We know that she's the menace for herself. She's not the menace akiyuzeh for her shviger or for anyone else who will be impacted, and therefore they'd even be able to eat truma. According to Reb Tarfin, and according to Rabbi Kiva, they won't be able to truma. But why do we need a case side by the tzara and side by the mother-in-law? If we only had the case with the tzara, there's a real hatred. And since there's a real hatred, we know for sure that she's lying legabe her sister-in-law. Well, how come Reb Tarfin should the tzara de gufa? Why is there such a real hatred? The greater hatred is because she's losing her husband's attention. Her husband cannot do deal with her if her husband is with her tzara. And that bothers her very much. So therefore, she for sure wants to mess her up. Abu Chamoisa, but her mother-in-law, she doesn't hate her mother-in-law as much as her sister-in-law, because as much as her co-wife, because her mother-in-law doesn't take away her husband's attention. Her mother-in-law just badmouths her to her husband. It's bad, but it's not as bad. Maybe there a type would hold that I'm not so sure she'll lie. So maybe if we're not so sure she'll lie, maybe we have to stop this woman from eating truma.
Physical pain is more sterker.
That's right. That's right. The Yitmar Baha, Baha Kamar Rabbi Kiva. Someone came over to me. Okay, let me just finish the two dots. Halacha Rab Tarfon. Halacha is like Rab Tarfon, that we believe her in Gansen to be matter herself, but we don't believe her at all. Lagabi her Torah, and her Torah could even be true. We actually have a brisa that supports the psak that we pass like a Tarfon. Because we're going to learn a Mishnah later, very shortly. What if she says, Nitan li ben b'Medina Sayam? She went with her husband to Medina Sayam, and she came back and said her husband died. But she said that when I went to Medina Sayam, I had a child with my husband. I guess they were away for years. I had a child. And Meis beni bi'achach baili. But my son died before my husband, meaning when I left in the chazaka that if my husband would die, I would need to do yibum with his brother. And when I'm coming back, even though I had a son, but I'm still maintaining the chazaka that I still have to do yibum, because even though I say I had a son, but the son died before my husband. So then the men she's believed. But what if she says, Baili ve'achach b'ni? What if she said that I had a child when I was there, my husband died, and then my son died, which means I'm free, I don't do yibum, then Eina Menes, she's not believed, and we still say that she has to deal with the Zika. The Choshin is Varela, and you have to be Choshish that maybe she's parted from Ibum. So therefore, we're not sure if she's Chayiv in Ibum or parted from Ibum, and therefore the Chaylatzas will loy misyabenes. The halacha is she has to get Chalitza from her husband's brother. But it says you have to be Medayik in the Mishnah. It says the Choshin lid Vareha. We only are Choshish to paskin on her words. What if it was her tzara who said that I had a son and then my husband died and then my son died? They're ain't choshesh. So what happens if her tzara said that I went to Medina Sayam with my husband and we had a child over there, my husband died and then my child died. So now there's no chiv ibum. Not only is there no chiv ibum on tzara, there's no chiv ibum on this woman who was home all the time either. There she could get ibum. You don't say, since the tzara said they're part from ibum, you believe the tzara, and therefore she goes free. No, she can do yibum. Ain't choshesh. Shemamina. You see that you're not l'gabe tzara. You're not choshesh at all with the words of the tzara, and therefore, in our case, it would translate into the fact that she could even eat truma.
How is this not amigo? Because there's no Sarah involved with it.
That's a very good question. You're talking about with the son. I never had to say that. Son. The Gemara is going to deal with that over there. So that's exactly the discussion the Gemara has. So excellent. I just want to bring up Rabbi Kanner came over to me. I don't know his first name, but it's one of Monty Kanner's sons. The only thing I know about him is that he lives at the corner of Frontenac and that street that's east of Bathurst. Because I took his son home last night. So I'm sorry. So he said he asked me a very interesting question. He said this sinah that we talk about. The question is nowadays: do mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws hate each other that much that you would say they're mechaven l'kalkol? Do tzoros hate each other that much? So all the poskim paskin 100% these halachas apply today 100% just the way they applied then. Don't say nowadays things are more civil. It's a nechtig. When it comes to money, when it comes to Torah, it's even worse. Ad kedei kach, the Ksav Sofer wrote in the 1800s that now could be it's even worse because now we have Chayim Rebbeinu Gershon. So these women know that one of them is going to have to go. So they even have a bigger hatred than Stamazoi Tutzars. But all of these same halachas apply today. So Rabbi Kanner asked me, it's pellet. The halacha is we hold that even if there's two women together you're not allowed to be miyachid with them. What if it's a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law? So the halacha is that you could be miyachid with them because they hate each other. So you wouldn't be able to be mizana with one because the other one would blow their cover. So the male, that's the shmir. So he asked how you talking nowadays where they get along, we should allow yichud. So he got into a whole discussion as to whether or not yichud with two women is there abundant or deraisa, and he showed that there's a machlokes b'shronim about it. So he was struggling to understand. How could we allow yichud with a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? How you talking? They get along so well. I actually didn't understand what was bothering him because Chazal understands the psyche of a person better than we understand their own psyche, and they know that each one knows that the other one's not going to cover for me, and they know that it's a shmira. But he held it a little bit difficult to appreciate because Lamais, they look like they're getting along, but Chazal tells us they don't get along. Okay, and even if they on the outside get along, on the surface they get along, that deep down there is this feeling. Yeah, that's the Rambam. Rambam has it right. It's the Rambam's right with the Catholic. Yeah. Okay, let's see the Gemara back. We have a beautiful Mishnah. Now we're going to veer off topic a little bit, and we're going to go away a little bit from Yevamos. Kiddush achas mechamish nashim. Someone made kiddushin on one of 5 women, and he doesn't know which one. Ve'eni de'ezo kiddush. And if he wants to stay married to all of them, so matay l'manoim. But the fact is, he doesn't want all of them. He could barely afford one. And kol achas ha'meres oisid kiddush. Each one of these 5 women said, "I am your wife." So what does he have to do? Noisin get l'chol achas v'achas. He has to give him each a get. But the pay of 5 ksubas is going to bankrupt him. So therefore, umaniach ksuba b'neim u'mistalim. He pays the ksuba once, he puts it there and let them all fight over it. Now the Rishonim say, Avada, they don't fight like cats and dogs over it. He places it in Bezdin, and Bezdin says whoever can bring a raya that they're the wife and that they're entitled to the ksuba, that's the one that will get the ksuba.
If you only married one of them, that's the only one that would have the ksuba, wouldn't it?
Well, so
is there a physical ksuba or what?
There is a physical paper, but I guess nobody had it, so nobody had proof.
So I'm shouldn't they?
Right. So you want to? He shouldn't have to give any. He should be able to hold it and say,
Right.
"When you prove that you're my wife, then I'll give you ksuba." So why do you even need to put it in Bezdin? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, Mechi says it's going to be addressed in the Gemara. We'll get there soon enough. Zog to Gemara, that's what Rabbi Tarfon said. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Ein zu derech moitzi b'dei aver. That's not how you deal with things. Ad sheyitin get uksuba l'chalachas v'achas. So you're going to have to get an uksuba to each one. And of course, the halacha is whenever there's a suffix, you have to swear. You'd have to swear. Each one would have to swear that I'm the wife in order to get the ksuba. What happens if Gazal Echad Mechamisha? He stole, and he knows it's one of 5 people who he stole from, but he doesn't know who it is. There was a communal mailbox for 5 people, and there was an Amazon package delivered there with a beautiful new set of earpods. And he took the earpods. He didn't read the address on the envelope, so he knows he stole from one of these 5 people. He doesn't know from who he stole from. Everyone said, "It was me. You stole my iPod." So the halacha is maniach gezela b'neim u'mistalim. You could just put it down and say, "Work it out, pals." Divir Reb Tarfon. Kiva Aimer ein zu derech moitzi midei aver ad sheyishalom b'chol echad ve'echad. He has to pay each one. Zog to Gemara, Kiddush katani boy loikatan. He made Kiddush Kesef, which is not humiliating a woman. It wasn't bia. He didn't do Kiddush bia. It's mashma that maybe if he did Kiddush bia, then even Reb Tarfon would agree that since he sort of denigrated a woman, the words that Rashi uses gina oisa for Kiddush bia. If he made her cheap, he humiliated with Kiddush bia, then maybe even Reb Tarfon would agree that everybody has to be paid out with tshuva. Gazel katani, it says he stole lakach lekatan. It doesn't say he bought from 1 out of 5 and he doesn't know who he bought from. Rather, he did something that was wrong. So Zok Gemara, Mani Masnis, our Mishnah seems to be inconsistent with any of the known Tanaim that we have that discuss this issue. Loi Tanakama v'loi Rab Shimon ben Elazar. The Tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Loi Nechluku Rab Tavin v'Rab Kiva, Al Shekidesh Achas Michamesh Nasim, Vein Yadei Zekidesh, Shemaniach Ksuba b'nei Mustalim. Even Rabbi Kiva agrees that if someone made kedushin with kesef, you don't have to give them each ksuba. You give one ksuba to Bez and let them figure it out. Alman nechnaku. So where do they argue? Al Shabbat, if he did bia, which was an avla, because that denigrates her by doing kedusha bia on these women. Rab Tarfon Amar, Rab Tarfon says, even there, only one ksuba. Rabbi Kiva Omer, since you denigrated this woman, you did enough. Lo nechleku Rab Tarfon Rabbi Kiva al shalokach mekach mechamisha b'nei adam ve'ini yodea me'izdam lokach. If someone bought something and he didn't know who he owes the money to, but he didn't do anything wrong, everybody agrees. Shemaniach demei mekach b'nei u'mistalak. Even Rabbi Kiva agrees. Lo nechleku the machlokes is only al shagozal mechamisha. He did an avla, and that's why Rabbi Kiva counsels him. But even so, Shomer Rab Tarfon Rabbi Kiva counsels him actually showing zela l'chalechada. So this is the shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So we become Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, the kiddush v'lokach loy pligi. If Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said that Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Kiva are not arguing by kiddush or by lokach, and everybody agrees there, it's meniach, the money b'neim u'mistalik michlal, that would tell us that the Tanakamas have a pligi, side by kiddush, side by lokach, side by gozal, side by baal. So money. Based on that, who's our Mishnah going to fit in like? Tanakama listening kiddush for lokach. It should say a case of kiddush for lokach, not for gozal, like it says in our Mishnah. And the Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar listening baal the gozal, because even in that case, Reb Tarfon holds you only have to give one tuba. So Gemara la'olam Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Really, it's going according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and they're only arguing if it was gozal and if it was baal. Umay kiddush. What does it mean in our Mishnah? It says kiddush means kiddush bibia, means he was mekadosh bibia, and there was an avla involved, and that's where there's a machlokes. But by lokach and by kiddush bekesef, everybody would agree. Meniach kazela b'neim u'mistalik, or meniach ksuba b'neim u'mistalik. So Zok the Gemara, my kiddush bibia. Tani kiddush. It said kiddush. Lo diacha koichai the Rabbi Kiva. It said kiddush to show the koich of Rabbi Kiva. And what's that? The avagav, the isur the rabbanon avad, doing kiddushin with bia is only asur with the rabbanon. But the Rai said it's fine. The rabbanon said you shouldn't do it. It's like not a fine way to do a marriage. So it's only an issue the rabbanon. So he didn't do something so bad. He only did an issue the rabbanon. Still konis. Still Rabbi Kiva says that he has to pay the mitzvah ksuba. And so the gozal, which he surely did on a veir, that was an issue that Raisa, he stole. Well, the Parvin to highlight the heter of a Parvin, the Avagav the Sur Raisa, but even though he did an issue the Raisa, Loikonis, the Parvin held one is enough. So no one says how much of a Chabal of Arai here. So what were you referring to? So maybe Rabbi Stefansky asked that kasha. So why does he either? Oh. But David asked a good kasha, right? Why do you have to give either one? Each one you should say Amochim and Chaber Levarai. I should be able to push off each one. Why do I have to put the money in escrow? I don't remember where I heard it. So if you remember the teretz, please share it with us, because I hear the kasha. Why does he have to do anything? Why does he have to do anything? Let's see if Rashi gives any hint of it.
More earlier we had that, that the money, meaning the hectare for her to
you're reminding me now. You're reminding me about the whole board over here is ksuba is not just a choshen mishpatik halacha. Ksubas, that's right. Ksubas is an Even Ezer D'Chalacha. Ksubas is a noshim. Ksubas should really be in Nezikin. It's a Chosh Mishpah Dekadin. Even in Shulchan Aruch, it's an Even Ezer. It's not a Chosh Mishpah, right? What pshat? Pshat is that Ksubas is actually a din of Itzav Heter, and is part of being mater a lady l'shuk. There has to be a ksuba, right? So that's what I heard. I actually heard a Virata speak it out. So his get isn't really a complete get unless it comes along with the ksuba. Ksuba is linked to the get. So in order for a get to be a good get, the ksuba has to be paid. Right. So in fact, if it was only, and this is another litmus test to show that ksuba is not completely nina mominus, because then you have David's kasha. But ksuba is an Even Ezer Dekadin, and it's linked to the get, because it says in the ksuba, whenever the woman goes free, she gets the ksuba. So in order for the get to be kosher, there has to be a ksuba.
Now makes sense why you can ask the kasha yesterday. Is it she asked me super first, or because she weren't sure if the soup? She asked me super first, or get
Right, because they're both marriage related. They're both chelik of her leaving her husband. Because even the ksuba, if she asks for the ksuba, it's also an Even Ezer Dekadin. Like Rashi said, when she's saying I need ksuba, she thinks that's being matter to get married because they're connected. Oh, very nice, very nice, very nice. Okay, now we'll see the last case of the parrot. Beautiful mishnah here. Ha'isha shahocha hiu baila l'medina sayam. A woman who went with her husband, they traveled overseas. Uvna iman, and they had a child, which means she was becheskas. She was becheskas, not muchayvin ibam, because she had a child. Uvav Omer, and she came back from overseas by herself, and she said, Meis Baili, first my husband died, ve'achach meis b'ni. So she left with the chazaka that she doesn't need yibum, and she's proclaiming the same thing, that I don't need yibum because I had a son that survived my husband. So Allah is nememes. She's nememes, once again, Rashi says, because she's not breaking the chazaka. Oh, this is weiter. Okay? What about meis b'ni? What if she says, first my husband died, and then my Baal died, which means now she's saying that I'm a choyv. So she left with the chazakah that it's usher for her to marry her brother-in-law. Her brother-in-law's Eishesach, and she's coming back, and she's saying she's mutter on her brother-in-law. They're ain't in the menace. They should not believe. But you're choishish that maybe she is chayv ibum. So therefore, you don't let her walk free. The chaylet says you require a chalitza from her brother-in-law. We don't trust her enough to allow her to do yibum, but we're choishish and we require a chalitza. We're worried about that she maybe likes her brother-in-law and she wants to marry her brother-in-law. And even though a woman is nemenis lagabi her husband, she's not nemenis lagabi her brother-in-law. What happens if she says nitin li ben b'medina sayam? I left the cheskas that I been mechuyev in ibum. When I got to Medina Sayam, I had a child. Right, we had this case on Amar Aleph. Right, and then the Amar Meis B'ni, and then my son died. So once again, I left the cheskas that I would be mechuyev in ibum if my husband died, and I'm not changing that chazak because I'm claiming I'm mechuyev in ibum. That meant this, and she could do ibum. But if she said Meis Baili, the Achagach Meis B'ni, but if she comes and says she left Becheskas, says she would be mechuyev in yibum, she goes away and then she comes back and said I had a son and therefore I'm not mechuyev in yibum. Ain't in a menace. We don't believe her because maybe she hates her brother-in-law, right? And she doesn't want it. Maybe she's making it up. And we are choishish enough to say that she's not mechuyev in yibum, and therefore we don't let the brother-in-law do yibum. We don't believe her. We still require chalitza, but we trust her enough that we don't let her do yibum. What happens if she says she went to Medina Sayam with her husband, and when she left, her husband was an only child. He had no brothers. And then Nitin liyabim b'Medina Sayam. And when we were in Medina Sayam, my mother-in-law and father-in-law together, because it has to be Ach and Av, had another son. So Nasan liyabim b'Medina Sayam. Amr, she said, Meis Baili, the Ach Meis Yevamos. First my husband died, and then my husband died, till Mamela, I still don't make Yibam, because there's no one for me to make Yibam with. Or Yevami Vachach Baili, doesn't matter, regardless, now there's no Yibam, Nememesh. She left with the understanding, with the chazaka, that she wouldn't be mechuyev in yibum because there was no brother-in-law, and she's not changing that status. But halkahi u'bayla v'yavam l'medina sayyam. So when she left the Medina Sayyam, she was under the chazaka that if her husband dies, she would need yibum from her husband's brother because he left with them, and then she came back. So she's coming back and she's saying that I'm not joking to yibum anymore because my brother-in-law died as well. Then ain't in the menace. Zok the Mishnah for Zoy she'ein ha'isha nemenes leimer meis yivame shetinasi. She's not believed to say that her brother-in-law died, which will now allow her to be free of her brother-in-law and marry any man she wants. V'loy meisa achoisa. She's not believed to say that her sister died, shetikanis levesai, that would allow her to marry her sister's husband. And ve'ena ishnem and leimer meis achi, and a man is not believed to say that my brother died, sheyive mishtoi, because he wants to do yibum on his brother's wife. And a person is not believed to say that his wife died, if he wants to marry her sister.
Anytime that he has a personal need.
Correct. So what you see from our Mishnah is our Mishnah shows you that we don't trust a woman to say that she's mechuyev in yibum because we're afraid maybe she likes him, and because of that, it's b'didami, she wasn't dug properly. And you also don't trust a woman to say that she doesn't make yibum because you're afraid she doesn't like him, and because of that, she was with the dummy. Rava had a question for Rav Nachman. I'm sorry? Right, you see Chazak as well, but the reason why I brought out this new point that you see that we're not sure, we have to be choshed. Every woman might either want her brother-in-law or might hate her brother-in-law. And that's going to be relevant for the next Gemara. But yes, the main point of the Mishnah is that you go basa Chazak. Correct. So Rava asked Rav Nachman the following question. Someone's about to die. He doesn't want his wife to fall to Yibum, to his brother, so he gives her a get before he dies. Ma, what's the law? Do you say, but he didn't give her the get directly. She's not even there. He knows he's dying. He's out on the battlefield. He knows he's mortally wounded. He doesn't want his wife to fall to Yibum. So he tells his friends, he tells the medic, before I die, quickly, I'm going to give you a get, and I want you to be kind to this for my wife. You'll be the shliach lakabala, and by you being kind to the get for my wife, you'll be mezaker with this get. So we know there's halacha zachin l'avim shalai b'panav, bein chavin l'adam el b'panav. If I want to pick up, if I find $100 on the floor, and I pick it up and I say, I'm picking this up for Mechi, don't worry, I wouldn't do that. If I found $100 on the floor, and I said, I'm picking this up for Mechi, you get it. Because there's no reason why you wouldn't want it. There's no reason why you wouldn't want it. It's a schus for you. But if I'm doing something as your shlichus that could be is not beneficial to you, there you have to be maman in your shliach. So what's halacha if a mezakah get listed in makam yom? There's a yom there. Ma, what do we say? Even the son you like schusula, since we assume she doesn't want to have to be mishah with her brother-in-law. Therefore, it's a schus. So if someone was makabel a get for her, we say zachan l'adam, v'zachan l'adam shleim b'panav. Dilma, even the zimin b'rachamolei, sometimes she might have the hearts for her brother-in-law. She wants her brother-in-law. And by getting a get, it's messing her up. Koivullah. Because now she'll be ushered to her brother-in-law. Bein chavin l'adam. Shleim b'panav. Amalei Tanina, we have a Mishnah that proves, in fact, that we don't know. We have to be choshesh, shy that she loves her brother-in-law and she wants to be married to him, and shy that she hates her brother-in-law and she wants to avoid him at all costs. Because what does it say in our Mishnah? So you have a raya from here that it's a suffix, and therefore a mezakah get lishtoi. The makam yovim, the halacha is it's not a good get; it's a suffix get. What if she's not there? What if she's not, he's on the battlefield, he's dying, and she's halfway around the world. It has to be a schiyah b'shas ma'aser. You're saying why can't you ask her later and it'll be gloy muslim afraya if it was good enough? I hear you, Shah, but we don't say that. It has to be at the time. Let's see what Rashi says. Let's see Rashi. A mazaket lishtoi she'asa shliach l'kabala v'zichaloi the shliach should discourage me'achshav. V'makam yavim sheyesh le'ach v'neschavim l'poitre menu the shaloi v'makam yavim who bol garsha. The shaloi v'makam yavim who bol garsha pshita the loy b'garsha asher the giliyada. Because it's a chai for a woman to be divorced So you're asking me, what if she says she wanted? I don't know. That's a good try. I don't know the answer. But what is the halacha if a man is dying and his wife is going to fall to Ibum and he knows that his brother is not a Shomer Torah mitzvah? And maybe he won't want to be involved in this old-fashioned Jewish ritual of chalitza. So there, for sure, the place can paskin that it's a schia. For sure, that's considered a schia. And the paskin halacha l'maisa that get works even if you're mizaka the get, if there's chash, you wouldn't give chalitza because he's not Shomer Torah mitzvah. Very good, very good, very good. So what Chaim is saying, such a story happened. So the Rav told him to send her a get with a shliach and then be mevatel the get. And we learned that when someone is mevatel the get, the chachamim are oikerish kedushin l'mafreya as a knas, right? So that's a good way for him to divorce his wife, even though he has no way of getting her get. Very interesting. Amalei Ravina l'Rav. Ravina told Rav, what if they're in a fight? What happens if he gets thrown into the doghouse and then his friend comes to bring him meals in the doghouse and he tells his friend, I'm going to be mizaka, I get to my wife, she's not happy with me. Do you say, even the isla katata b'hadei, since she's fighting with him, it's chosula, it's for sure a chos, and the kabbalah saget will be a good kabbalah saget. Idilma tzavsa the gufa adafla. Even though she's angry at her husband, she still wants to have company, and she for sure wouldn't want to get. She'd rather a husband in the doghouse than no husband at all.
But husband in the doghouse is not subsidy.
Eventually it will be. Tonight it is. Right? Tashma. The Amarish Lakish. Tav Lumeitav Tadu Milamesav Amalu. It's always better to live together than to live alone. Abai says, the Shumshin Agaver, what if she has a husband that's small like a little sesame seed? He's a tiny little guy. So you think who wants to be married to that? Like it's embarrassing. Nevertheless, she'll sit with all the women who are free, powerful women, and she sits right there with them in pride. I'm also married. So just a sense of pride. She'll have a sense of pride even for a husband who looks like a little sesame seed. Papa Amar, the Nafzagaver, what if he does a very miyasa malacha? He's a comber of wool. And that was a very derogatory malacha. What? So they smelled and it wasn't. But nevertheless, Tikri Bisifi Bava Vitasen. She'll call her husband, come sit with me by the gate. Let's sit on the porch together. She's also proud of a husband, even though he's a nafta. And Ashi Omer, the Kulsa Gavra, even if he has a horrible reputation, and his family could be psulim, psulayiches, and other bad things, she's still happy. She won't even ask him for cheap beans for food. She's happy. Don't give me anything. Just be my husband. Why? Why are they so excited to have a husband? Tana, we learned, you know why? They only want husbands so that then when they're mizana with who they really want to be with, and they become expecting, they can say, this is for my husband. So you thought, we were thinking for a second, they're proud of us no matter who we are. No. It's not I love you just the way you are. That's nonsense. They're just using us. Exactly, using us as an excuse. So unfortunately, the Aruch HaNer speaks out that these four Amiroim that are telling us the different undesirable men that they would still want to live with, it's four concepts. Cases, even though they're not connecting emotionally, they're fighting, she still would rather be married to him. Abai is saying, even though he's physically very unappealing and ugly, she still wants to be married to him. And Rav Papa says, even if his stature is very low, she'll still want to be married to him. And Rav Ashi says, even if he has bad yichus, she'll still want to be married to him. So in any one of these four, no matter what direction this husband has a problem with, she'll still want him, not because she cares about it. It's because she wants to have someone that she can blame her misdeeds upon. So Baruch Hashem, we finished Ha'isha Shalom. I think the Yevamos is the last pair in we're about to learn the last parak of Maseches Yevamos, and we're only a couple of blot away. So, V'lineder hadin Allah Yisha Shalom, hadin Allah Yisha Shalom, hadin Allah Yisha Shalom.
Wenn wir los diesen Thomas